Welcome, data people. We are Zuma. My name is Matt, and this is the Data for Good podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Zuma. Zuma is a dedicated recruitment company focusing on data positions across Berlin. The Data for Good podcast is for the world of data science, analytics, and engineering, giving you a platform to hear the thoughts and opinions of data leaders from Berlin and beyond. Today, we are joined by Pavel Yakunin, data architect at Deutsche Bank. Pavel, welcome. How are you?
Hi, Matt. Amazing.
Awesome. For those who don't know, can you give us a quick introduction?
I work for Deutsche Bank for the last 9 years, and for the last several years, I work for data stack and data platform. We are building everything around data and the foreign exchange business of Deutsche Bank. So I'm responsible for the architecture part and for some of the technology solution that we bring in.
Amazing. So a lot of wisdom and experience that we're going to tap into today. And today on the podcast, we're here to talk about data in large established organizations. So to start off with, when we talk about large organizations, what do we mean? When does a company become a large established organization?
I would say the critical part is not large but established. That means for our topic that the organization has been there even before the data topic existed. So the business is much more old than all the things we will be talking about. That means that when building or anything about the data, we need to take into account all the legacy, all the traditions that we have in the bank, all the regulations around this, which appeared long before our modern data processing technologies and so on. So we need to keep this in mind, not to break stuff. And that also should shape your expectation on what kind of issues you will be solving along the journey and what will be your success criteria and so on.
So an organization which pre-existed data and how we see data today, how we use it, utilize.
Basically, when I read something about data stack or talk to somebody about that, people usually think of the technical stack, the approaches, the problems which arose with the internet era, like Google wanted to process all the clicks they had, so they invented Hadoop to scale it somehow. But in our world, this has been happening long before. Like we needed to gather all the financial data long before Hadoop existed. Some of our systems, like KDB, for example, predated by several years, and it was already lightning fast big data processing and so on. Some stuff like Vertica is even more ancient, and the problem itself is much more ancient than the internet era. What actually happened back then is that Google and other companies just commoditized the technology, so we didn't have to employ some really complex and expensive solution anymore. It took them a lot of time to mature enough for our purposes, but still it made our life easier. But at the same time, we got a lot of processes already built the way we used to have them, and we could not change it, and we would not change that because that would affect the traders, the analysts, the management, whoever is using the data. So usually the organizations like this are not about big data or huge data. It's about diverse data. Like you need to balance all the stakeholders, you need to balance all the types of the data, and you need to provide them all some experience of accessing the data which would be consistent with their need and their habits, basically.
So tell us more about balancing and what we mean by that.
If you offer people something they are long used to, you won't make their life easier. Like they would want, well, slightly better Excel.
Yeah.
Whoever you ask, they always want an Excel that is just large enough to fit all the data, all the, say, deals happened for the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
You understand that it's not possible, and usually people don't need that because nobody will be looking at 4 billion of rows of data by their eyes. They will be writing the queries and so on. So basically your work as a person responsible for data would be to offer them something that will change their behavior but keep in mind their needs. So you just don't try to get there and tell, okay, you stop using Excel, now you're using SQL or
Yeah.
Python or whatever. You try to marry this stuff together. You build a connector from Excel to make them transition smoothly. So this is the balance.
Okay. And working with legacy and older setups, what are the challenges that you face when you're looking for these balancing?
Well, there are different kind of legacy. The first kind of legacy is what I have described, like people are used to old tools, the tools they have been using for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
There is another side of this coin. It's like when we were developing the application in the past, we rarely thought of the data as of something of value, primarily because keeping this data was prohibitively expensive. Say if you have a look on the vertical pricing, you will see that the more data you keep in, the more you pay.
Yeah.
It's not like this anymore. Now the storage is cheap. So all the applications who used to throw the data away, now they need to keep that and they need to develop their applications in the way when they keep the backward compatibility of the data. Like if I want to query a deal happened 5 years ago, I need to be able to understand the fields, like I understand the fields on the recent deal. So we introduced the whole new concept of the model evolution in our inter-application connectivity, just to be able to keep this data forever.
Mm-hmm.
And so on. This kind of problematic is new, and that requires people to adopt their thinking, to adopt their designs. And well, just to remember that this stuff is important and costs money if you
Mm-hmm.
just throw the data away. So that's I think even bigger challenge.
And what does it mean to keep all this data in highly regulated areas such as finance?
That's hard. Like if you build some spherical small company in Wacom, you may just choose to go to BigQuery and put all the data there and, well, forget. But then if you are regulated and if you are present in hundreds of, in dozens of countries around the world, you need to take into account that some of the regulators don't like the cloud at all. Some of them want their data of their citizens to be stored on within the borders of the countries and so on and so forth. Usually it's either not possible or really expensive to achieve it within a standard cloud. So
Mm-hmm.
you need to have some big data solution which you are able, at least partly, to run on premise. This way you will set the servers in the country of presence. You do this anyway because you have offices there. So you just set a server there and then you ensure that data is not crossing the border and so on. This is, well, part one about the cloud. The second part is that usually you need to adhere to much stricter requirements on the data consistency. Like if you lose several clicks from a web application, that's usually not a big deal.
Yeah.
Usually in building normal applications, you either have clicks, which are not critical, or you have
Yeah.
billing, which is usually in transactional databases.
Mhm.
And here we found ourselves in a position when we need to keep all the data and be responsible that the data is complete, but the data is not transactional and the volumes of the data is huge. So we need both big data storage, and this storage should offer us some guarantees on the completeness and so on. So these are, I think, the main two challenges we face with the regulation side of our work.
How much does this impact innovation when you're taking all this into account?
Well, depends on what do you consider innovation. So if you want to bring new tech every year, that won't work, of course. But then if you try to build a big data solution, which is at the same time always complete when a regulator comes there and asks for evidence,
Yeah.
and you can prove that actually, then there's a lot of innovation. It's just not fashionable enough. So you won't see this kind of innovation typically on GitHub with a Flash page and so on.
Okay. So when we're talking about big data, what are in regulated areas different perspectives from who's using it? We're talking about developers, managers, or the business. How do you take those all into consideration?
These people have different incentives. Basically, business people are usually interested in something which they can build fast. Like if they have all the data in a single place, they can query and try their hypothesis. And usually it looks like they build a report, then they forget about the report. And the developers of the platform, they have quite opposite incentives, like they need to run the platform in the long run.
Yeah.
And every such forgotten query is a problem for them because they don't know if it's failing. Is it fine? Is it not fine? Should we do something with that or not? So that's a constant, not to say struggle, but a constant negotiation coming in between the business people and the platform people regarding how to organize the work about this. Then another dichotomy is between the developers of the platform and the developers of other applications. Basically, other applications are not much interested in their data. Usually, it's business who are interested in their data. So we, as a platform developers, we have to offer them something really simple to use. So they will use it eagerly and dump the data to us. And we also offer them some additional bonus, like they can dump their logs into our platform and then use it as a way to debug their complex mathematical stuff for pricing, for example, which cannot be tackled with common logging solutions. So we are building this kind of platform where we incentivize developers of the applications to share the data. And the balance between the business need and the long-term platform survivability is something we are still developing actively. It's a never-ending process, I think.
How important is education on the business side? Support your goals.
That's really important. Basically, it's not quite trivial to explain people why we don't allow them to create arbitrary tables on the production, because that's so convenient. And then we need to tell them that in the long term, that will create a nightmare for them. And then we have to be really persuasive because, well, it's hard to convince you that if you are eating unhealthy food, you will have a health problem in the future. This is the same topic. They prefer short-term gratification to
Mm-hmm.
the long-term health, and so we have to be creative here. We balance limitation on some kind of activities on the environments
Mm-hmm.
with telling them how much it actually costs to keep all the traces of unregulated environment into the future. So education is really important here. Like, you can show a trader an error happening because he used the table which was created by his colleague, and nobody noticed him that the table was filtered. And then they understand why we don't allow creating arbitrary table, because they will be misusing them and getting wrong results, and then making wrong business decisions.
How do you motivate people, or do you gamify? How do you show and educate and get this trust?
Well, we don't gamify, like we are just talking a lot. I mean, somebody comes to us asking that what he sees is not what he expects.
Mm-hmm.
So then we just go together and we'll show him why. And usually this how people educate themselves. And then we have one trader who is familiar with the system. He can share the knowledge with other traders.
Mm-hmm.
And usually it's not only this way, but also from their managers, because managers of traders want to see the picture overall. So they are our first clients usually, and we got to them explaining why data quality matters. Well, they know it themselves because, well, they see all the discrepancies themselves and so on. And then it's easier, because as soon as we have the manager's side on us, then it's easier.
Yeah, definitely. So what areas are we looking to continuously improve? What's the future for this setup?
Well, there's a lot. Like, there's now out-of-the-box technology supporting all our needs in the data. We have to invent ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We are building it from pieces, and as the technology evolves, now it's ClickHouse with some our tweaks and tricks to support the highly complex permission model which we have
Mm-hmm.
imposed by regulators and by our own business considerations. So this used to be basic, and as we grow it, we can allow more and more cohorts of people inside our system. So if initially system was supposed for traders, now they are extending that to sales who have, well, rather different profile of access.
Yeah.
And so on. So this is the major way of growing. We democratize the data for the users.
Yeah.
The second way is we are building the model evolution division-wise, like a set of practices, a set of tools, a set of documentation platform, and tech writers, and so on, who are documenting the data on the source.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we are trying to build the sense of the data at the place where the data is gathered or created, and then to propagate it to the system. So from one side, the teams are supplying us with quality data and the more data, and
Mm-hmm.
at the other side, the users of the data understand what's behind this field, these columns, and so on.
Yeah.
And this kind of a never-ending journey. So we are much better than we were a year ago. We are like orders of magnitude better than we were 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But it's still huge room for improvement.
Machine learning, AI is super hot at the moment. how much is this implemented in
Um,
your
yeah,
goals?
machine learning has been around again for much longer time than it's fashionable. So if you ask a typical quant is somebody who would have been called data scientist if this term existed back then in the 80s.
Yeah.
Basically, quants are the people who are analyzing the time series of the data on some laws of financial markets and so on, and invent the models. They would call you that the machine learning is just another name for math and statistics.
Yeah.
So basically, most of the machine learning is already here. Traders are using our data to train their model. What we are exploring right now is to apply the machine learning and the statistics to the fields that were not applicable for machine learning previously. Like traders are used to do that, and sales were not used to do that. So we are trying to shift this focus from traders to sales because they also have a lot of area where it can be useful. So yeah, the concept itself is quite old for us. It's much older than the fashion, but we are still gaining from it.
Is it recognizable, machine learning now, and the quant work that was been doing, 40 years ago?
Yeah, well, basically the models are different. Like if you see the models for quants, these would be time series models usually. If you look at the contemporary machine learning models, it's either a neural network or some classificator or something like that. These kind of models were not of use for finance, at least not for investment banking.
Yeah.
And recently they started to be applicable for fraud detection in these kind of troubles when you need to actually classify a transaction whether it's good or potentially bad.
Yeah.
But well, yeah, the models are different.
Okay. And all these developments and things that you're working on at the moment, how do you think that will impact the way we work with data moving forward?
Well, basically, I think that going forward, we will more and more see the consolidated data in the large organization. Like every large organization is usually siloed, like you have one department for retail, another department for investment banking, yet another for something else. And they used to build a different data structure. What we will have in a few years is the same silo, but the data in the silo will be pluggable. Like if you are sitting in one of the departments, you will be able to query the data from another as soon as you have the permission, without any need to prioritize or develop or design or whatever else is needed now to get the data from a different department into your system. And that means that stuff like cross-selling, like holistic client analysis, like tailoring your products to clients will become much easier than it is now.
Yeah.
And then it will be much easier for a bank to serve different sides of the client business, like not only foreign exchange, but also rates product, but also some other kinds of banking products.
So it'd be much more valuable in understanding the client.
Understanding the clients, yes. And for the clients, I think that will be much more valuable as we have a kind of people who called structures. They work is they try to understand the client business and tailor a product for them. So the work of structures will likely become much more efficient. and so the client will have more value for the money. I think that's where everything is going.
Would this be visible to the client, or would this all be going on behind the scenes and they would just benefit from the outcomes?
That's hard to say. I think the clients will feel it like suddenly the proposals from the bank will become much more sensible.
Right. So it would be a lot more valuable, but they wouldn't necessarily see all the workings. Is there any ethical issues to big data and the ideas that we have moving forward and things that we need to consider?
Well, you need to do the permission stuff in the right way. Like you need to be able to you need to be able to prove, you need to be able to maintain your access control in a way then no wrong data can be seen by wrong people. Most of the big data stuff can be done without knowing who the client is. Basically, you anonymize everything you can, and then you just work with anonymous recommendations, and then it's much easier from ethical point of view. You just don't know who you are working with. With working with data, you just know that this client ID something is potentially interested in that product. So
no, I hear you. Oh, amazing. Well, we could talk about this for a while. I'm conscious of time. So wanted to finish up with one question to you, Pavel. What are you most excited about? What are you looking forward to as we do evolve and move forward with big data and all the things that we spoke about today?
Well, I think that the most exciting part is how cheap it is now to keep all the data you actually produce, and then how accessible it has become to make sense of this data. And basically, that was not the case even 5 years ago. And taking from that, we can spare a lot of efforts on doing things that are necessary, it makes sense, and stop doing things which doesn't make sense. So the promises are either less work for the same amount of value or more value for the same amount of work, which are both great.
What processes and things in particular are you looking forward to if we're doing so much more of all this data? What do you reckon are the most exciting use cases?
Use cases for data?
Yeah.
I mean, usually you can figure out how your clients behave en masse on what products are useful, what products are not so. And this way you can actually make the investment decisions, like if you want to. That's what our business are doing. Basically, they are looking at data and they see which products are beloved and which products are not so. So then having a finite resources you can prioritize. I think that it's the most the only application for this actually.
Absolutely. It's been a invaluable conversation. Have a lot of insights that we have shared today, but unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. Thank you for your time and your rich insights, Pavel.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Awesome. And as always, to the listeners, don't forget to like and share so we can reach as many people as possible. But it is bye from us. Thanks once again, Pavel.
Thank you. Bye.
Ciao for now.